I read somewhere some reviewers equating it to the 7 of the series, as in 7 the movie. They're comparing it to the movie 7. Welcome, nerds, to the final episode of the season for the week in Nerdom. In today's episode of the Nerd News, we have 2 rumors that surround Deadpool to some degree. We also have Gears of War in the movies section. We have reboots, returns, and retries to talk about. All of that in the final episode of this season, so join me. Before we can get into the news, though, we do have housekeeping to talk about. I am obviously feeling a little bit better from the last episode, feeling better from the live episode as well. And I think we're actually going to get a live episode in to squeak one last Friday live episode in this week. And then the first week of December, second week of December, we will be back to Wednesdays only, and it will be just live on Wednesdays. So if you want to join in the conversation as it's happening, then you can join me on youtube.com/generallynerdy. I think now they're fully rolled out with the handles situation, so the new URL is youtube.com/@generallynerdy, I believe. So yeah, you can try either way. And the end of the season marks a different schedule up through January, and then end of January we will be getting back to our regularly scheduled programs, once on Wednesday, once on Friday. For those of you on the syndicated outlets, Nerdy Legion and Big Show Entertainment, then the actual episodes will be posted on Thursdays during the off season, and not on Wednesdays. Wednesdays when it goes live, and then I have to take time to edit things out and make sure it's acceptable for all of the other platforms. Again, if you want to join the conversation in real time, then the place to do it is the YouTube channel, Generally Nerdy. When we go live during the off season, that's going to be Wednesday evenings. So that being said, what else do we have in housekeeping? I feel like there was something else and I didn't take any housekeeping notes, so I apologize. But I think that's going to be it. Yeah. So next in the line of succession is That Just Happened. This actually was supposed to go in last week's episode, but if you couldn't tell, it was in a bit of a fog, so we were lucky we got through the news that we did. So we're going to be talking about it this week, and we're talking about, once again, Interview with a Vampire. So I have yet to watch the most recent episode just because I've been trying to play catch up from being sick, and I had a couple of other appointments this week that have kept me away from watching the things that we want to talk about. So we're going off of a little bit of old information based on this, but it bears to reason that the newest episode is kind of irrelevant because I don't think they're going to course correct from these things that I took issue with in the last episode. So episode, I believe it was 5, and I could be wrong, because, again, I take amazing notes, but either way, once again, episode number is fairly irrelevant because we're just going to talk about the things that happen. So if you are watching this show and you're a little bit further behind than I am, then spoiler alert, I guess. If you haven't watched any episodes and you're planning on watching them all, binging the whole season once they come out, again, spoiler alert, maybe skip forward a few minutes. If I can remember, I'll try and put a time code down here, but either way, yeah, you've been warned. So we have, in the last episode that I watched, we have a couple of things transpired. We're still developing the character of Claudia. We're also still developing this world because this version of the world is so dramatically shifted from Anne Rice's iteration of it. In most ways, in a good way, and in some ways, we're going to talk about that. There's, pretty much every episode you have to build a little bit of the world while you're building these new characters as well, which is to be expected when you're telling, a new story, because that's what they're doing. So The only one that doesn't need newness added to him is Lestat. We're not really going to talk about Lestat much in this. The first thing we're going to talk about is the departure, because there was a pretty dramatic departure from the Anne Rice lore in the last episode that I watched, and that was the age of the vampire kind of determines the strength of the vampire. Yes, I do realize that Louis and Claudia technically overpowered Lestat a little bit in the original novel when they tried to kill him, but more they tricked him more than anything, because Lestat is one of the oldest vampires at this point. Not the oldest, and there are a few older than him, yes I know, but one of the oldest, like, active in society vampires, if you will. So they couldn't have really overpowered him without taking him by surprise. There was no real physical struggle. The biggest struggle was Claudia trying to kill Lestat by giving him the blood of dead humans, which is poisonous to vampires in the lore, which we've established in this series lore. That is also the case. So the expectation is that's where it's going to go. Again, maybe that's already happened because I'm an episode behind, but that is not exactly what happens in this episode. So there's two issues with this. If we're not going to acknowledge that age is a major factor in the strength of a vampire, I feel like there is a lot of character dichotomies that are going to suffer significantly moving forward in this story, in this universe, because kind of the entirety of the vampire Lestat and the Queen of the Damned. Oh wow, almost forgot the name of the third book. Vampire Lestat and Queen of the Damned, as we're building up Akasha and as we're building up these old vampires, Maharet and so on and so forth. The fact that their age makes them incredibly powerful is a key character point with all of these vampires. I guess I'm establishing my argument, and then I'm going to give you the example. The example in the episode is, first off, we have Louis again wrestling with Lestat, which should be like a 6-year-old trying to wrestle a marble statue. Just shouldn't be a thing that he's capable of doing. I think Claudia at one point even kind of jumps on Lestat's back because she's taking Louis' side, and yeah, so that shouldn't have happened at all. But also the more pressing issue, because yes, that's a different visual way to create tension between these characters, so it's almost excusable under that form of thought. But if you take what happens to Claudia after she leaves Louis and Lestat, and because she goes on this college tour effectively, and she runs into another vampire who is admittedly younger. I believe he says he's 5 years old. She says she's 100 and something, but that's not right. She's lying, obviously, to scare him, I would imagine. But really, she is, I believe at this point, she's in the age range of approximately 80 plus years. And that should be a significant difference in power levels. She should be significantly more powerful than this boy, effectively. And the thing that transpired, again, we're going to play it safe with the vocabulary here because these things get a little dark, and you know, monetization is a thing that I strive for someday, so we're not going to be talking about the details of what happened, but you know, you can kind of put two and two together here. So yeah, she should not have been able to be taken advantage of by a vampire that is significantly younger than she. So this attempt at creating extra character issues with Claudia in order to force her to grow up, I would imagine is what they were thinking, really doesn't work, because you're now undermining kind of a core tenet of this universe's vampires. And so you're setting yourself up for failure in the long run. Does it work in this very short term? Sure, like it doesn't necessarily fall flat. You gain some sympathy for Claudia, which I'm sure was partially the point. And you also get to see Claudia become a little more world weary, a little more educated on the way things go on outside of the house of Louis and Lestat. So yes, in that term, sure, it works all right, but there's got to have been a better way to establish both of those points and also keep the underlying mythology intact. So we're waffling again. I was loving it, and then this episode happened, and I'm like, not loving this as much right now. And then the second issue, as of two episodes ago, is we establish in the episode even prior to that, we establish that there is a connection between a maker and the makee. So the reason why Louis loves Lestat is because there is this magnetism between them, because Lestat is Louis' maker. Much like in Lestat's own story of Magnus, he was drawn to Magnus. He wanted to learn everything that Magnus had to teach him, and that didn't happen because Magnus went crazy and threw himself in a fire, just like he does in the books. So this is an established piece of the mythology. This is not something that goes unspoken. This is not something that the fandom is keeping in headcanon from the book mythology to this new series mythology. This is something that the series acknowledges is the mythology in itself. And then they go and break this mythology in the very next episode because Claudia obviously has zero connection to Lestat in this way. This is something that I also take a little bit of issue with because it's also dealt with in a slightly more elegant manner, but still also dealt with poorly, I would argue, in the original novels, because again, why would Claudia, if there is this connection, which they do establish in the novels, if there is this connection, why does Claudia try to kill Lestat? Why doesn't she, like Louis, because he is the maker of both of them, why doesn't she try and explain away to herself the things that Lestat does? Why is this conflict even here? If that is the case. I understand from a storytelling point of view why this conflict exists, but that's where we stand right now. That's honestly the only thing I have to talk about in the That Just Happened episode, or portion of the episode, because sick and busy and things, and the ultimate episode for the season, so was kind of doing a lot of things that were not allowing me to digest the pop culture this week. And also elections. I went out and voted, and had to do research on why I wanted to vote the way I wanted to vote, and so that got in the way of things as well. Hopefully you voted. I guess we could talk about that in That Just Happened. We're not going to get too political. The only thing I am wanting to say is, regardless of which direction you wanted it to go, I really hope you went to the ballot box, filled out your ballot, dropped your vote, and made sure that your voice was at least kind of heard in our republic, because that is the best way for us to make the changes that we want to see in this country. So, again, that's about as deep as we're going to get. Hope you voted. That is the That Just Happened section. Let's talk news. In the music section, this is going to be a pretty decent final episode for the season. But in the music news section, we have some music that I honestly was pretty excited to hear. A couple of songs that I'm super excited to tell you about. We also have one song that surprised me a little bit, and one song that is kind of the expectation. So what am I talking about? Let's get into this. Also, Motorhead is coming back. We're going to get into that in the news and touring section. But first off, new music. So new music for the week as we come into the end of our season is starting things off. Everclear has put out a new track. The name of this track is The Year of the Tiger. Art Alexakis still knows how to write a damn tune. I am a big Everclear fan. I think this is great fun. I also think that it is really worth noting, if you don't align with his personal politics, this one's going to be a little bit difficult to get past the lyrical content, but it is still a hell of a tune and still honestly works even in a political sense, even if you don't necessarily agree with him, because there's just some things in here that are fairly common sense when it comes to any politician, aside from the ones he's specifically talking about. But it is also super noteworthy that Everclear has released the 30th anniversary of their premiere album, World of Noise, which is the first one that got them signed, is now finally on streaming services. It is the 30th anniversary deluxe edition, which features 6 new tracks, and 2 of which were previously released as singles, Drunk Again and Nervous and Weird, the 2001 remix, which if you like Everclear, you'll like this stuff. You're gonna like this track regardless. It's just good alt pop, rock, whatever. Just go listen to it. Next on the list for new music, we have Vile Valo, who is the vocalist from him. He is releasing his first solo record called Neon Noir. This track is called The Forever Lost. I don't like him. I'm not a big fan of Vile Valo, but this was a little bit, it's still gothy, poppy, exactly what you expect when you think of the 2 words that are the title of this record, Neon Noir. That's pretty close to exactly what I was expecting based off the title, but surprised me with how catchy it was, which kind of is generally the state of any hymn tune as well. So this is, if you like him, you're going to like Vile's solo stuff because he is the beating heart of him. If you don't like him, you probably aren't going to enjoy this too much, unless you just are a sucker for a catchy tune, in which case you're going to dig this. So yeah, that's about as much of a recommendation as I can give for that. This next one comes from August Burns Red. We should have talked about this one last week, but I was sick. We didn't talk about any new music. So the name of this song is Ancestry. Comes off of their forthcoming newly announced album, Death Below. Album comes out March 24th on Sharptone Records. This song features Jesse Leach from Killswitch Engage, and it is exactly what you want from that combination of vocalists. Actually, it's even more than that, because this is probably the most personal that August Burns Red has been with their lyrical content, and it's super heavy in that respect just because it is such a close issue with their vocal. I'm blanking his name and I apologize, but it is such a close issue with him and with Jesse, and just both of these guys have perfect time to shine. And of course, as always, the band, the musicians in this band shine like crazy. Their bass player, there is no rock bass syndrome with August Burns Red. These guys know exactly what to do and how to do it. And this song is just as crushing as ever, and lyrically probably heavier than they've ever been. Our final piece of new music for this episode comes from the band Vended. That's right, Shawn Crahan and Corey Taylor's kids are in a band together. It's called Vended. They put out a new single called Overall. We briefly mentioned this in the most recent live episode, and I told you we were going to be talking about it, so here we are. This is more evidence that these kids are definitely growing as performers and as songwriters. Their first track wasn't big fan of that stuff. Pretty much everything off of What Is It, Kill It, their first EP, I did not necessarily, couldn't get behind it. This one though, they're following their father's footsteps. I still think that Corey's, I again, can't remember their names off the top for the life of me, but I still think that Corey's kid really is trying too hard to be a lyricist like his father, which no one else can do in this world, let alone him, because he's, not as world experienced as his dad, but still a good, solid metal track nonetheless. Okay, let's talk about tours, and honestly, we don't have any actual tours to talk about. We just have some festival stuff that has been announced, so we're going to start at the top and then move our way through, and honestly, 2 of these festival announcements have very interesting bands as part of their main lineup, so let's get to that. We're going to start with Sick New World Festival. It is going to be May 13th in Las Vegas at the Las Vegas Fairgrounds, Festival Grounds rather, and this one's super interesting because Coal Chamber, Des Fafara, who sings for Devil Driver these days, has announced that Coal Chamber is coming back and they are on the bill for this festival. Pretty huge. They are alongside their peers Korn and the Deftones, as well as Death Grips, KMFDM, System of a Down. The list is gigantic. It is absolutely, if you can find your way down to Vegas next May, then you are not going to regret it. This is a hell of a bill. You can find links down in the description to see the full list and all that jazz, and hopefully tickets if I can find some sort of ticket link. But our next one has to do with the Download Festival. Happens every year in the UK. This year is no exception. It is usually something pretty awesome. We have Slipknot, Bring Me the Horizon, Metallica, Evanescence, Parkway Drive, Disturbed, Pendulum, Architects, Ghost, The Distillers, Placebo, Alexis on Fire, Asking Alexandria, Motionless in White, I Prevail. The list goes on and on and on and on. This one is June 8th through 11th. It is in Donington Park. I am not going to be able to say this the name of this place correctly. Leicestershire? Maybe? That is what we've got for Download Festival. And then the other really interesting festival announcement was Ozzfest. This is interesting on multiple levels. First of all, it's Ozzfest returning in a digital form for reasons. And so anyone will be able to get tickets. It's just a live broadcast. You just pay to have access to their server. That kind of is what it is. But it's Ozzfest coming back in digital form. And one of the big bands on this bill is Motorhead. Very intriguing, because if you don't know, the lead singer for Motorhead was one Lemmy Kilmister, and he has passed on something like 8 years ago, maybe even more. So the big question, because all that's been announced, no date for Ozzfest has been announced just yet. If I can find that, I will definitely be letting you know, hopefully by the live stream this Friday. But no date has been given, and no explanation has been given for the Motorhead situation, because are they going to find somebody else to do the vocals? Are they going to do some sort of like hologram Lemmy? Is it going to be like repurposing of live footage from previous shows when Lemmy was still alive? There's so many questions here. What the hell are they going to do with Motorhead for Ozzfest this year? As we get closer, hopefully we'll get more information and we'll be able to touch base on this once again when we return to regularly scheduled episodes, or even perhaps in the live episodes, who knows. But moving right along, kind of in the same vein, because going back to that Sick New World Festival, we have Flyleaf is also on that bill, which is not exactly breaking news, except for the fact that Lacey Sturm, the original vocalist for said band, is going to be returning to front the band once again. Now, it does seem like they're being specific with their vocabulary in this announcement, saying that it is just going to be for this performance. There's no tour that's been announced. Obviously, there's no new music that's been announced. It just seems that Lacey has come to an agreement with the band so that they will be able to do the festival. And I really hope, because that is honestly their first record is a record that I listened to probably for like 3 months straight when it first came out. It is surprisingly good if you are a fan of music, and aggressive music at that. But we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Either way, Lacey Sturm coming back to front Flyleaf, at the very least for some festival gigs, and that sounds pretty awesome to me. Next, we're going to talk about Slipknot. Shawn Crahan, one of the percussionists for the band and one of the band leaders, or the band leader, if you will, has done some interviews recently talking about the future of the band. This is relevant because their most recent record, which they're currently on tour supporting, so these announcements or these theories could be coming to fruition a little ways down the road. But if you don't know, The End so far is the final record on their contract for Roadrunner Records. So moving forward, they're no longer tied down by a record label. And now Shawn has been in these interviews saying that they're going to play with a new release style, in that they're only going to be releasing singles and potentially not full albums. It seems to be the way of things. It honestly seems to be the way that their kids in Vended are doing things. Yes, they did release that one EP, but since then they've released a number of singles. with no full-length album in sight. So that is kind of the way of the world these days. You could take the traditional route and do a full record and then release singles from already recorded music, or you could do the Protest the Hero route where you're recording an album, and as the album finishes, you release those tracks in order, or you could do the Tom MacDonald route and just kind of write a whole bunch of music, and as you're finishing that production, you choose a couple of those songs to release as singles. Once those have released, you build up you've built up interest in the product, not a fan base because it's Slipknot. They have one of the largest fan bases in the community. But you build up the interest in the product, and then once you have interest in a full length, then you release the full length. That could also be the case. Very interesting to think about if Slipknot is adapting this, and Slipknot are kind of it's somewhere between the old guard and the new. They're not exactly old guard, but they've been around a little while, probably a lot too long to call them new guard. So interesting to see if they're adapting this release style, then perhaps the industry as a whole is about to make a pretty big shift. So very interesting to think about. That's what we've got there though. So that leaves only music suggestions for the episode. And like I said, we're going to be talking about Flyleaf again. This is where we're talking about Flyleaf again. Music suggestion this week, and actually until we come back, is the Flyleaf record. Honestly, I'll probably make some suggestions in live episodes, but as it stands right now, Flyleaf's self-titled first record is definitely something you want to go listen to if you appreciate quality songwriting and rather aggressive stuff. If you can get past the religious imagery, then these are some solid, heavy rock tunes. They are not metal like we generally suggest on the channel, but they are absolutely solid nonetheless. So go check out Flyleaf's self-titled record. All right, now, nerds, let's talk about some gaming and tech. We're going to be talking about Stranger Things in gaming and tech. That's right. New Monster Hunter game coming out and Final Fantasy follow-up. So let's get into all of that. First up in follow-ups, we're talking Final Fantasy XVI officially going to be exclusive on the PlayStation 5 for the first 6 months. That's right. 6 months exclusive for PlayStation, which I can live with. I'm not a big Final Fantasy guy, but it is one of the biggest franchises in the video game world, so as long as it eventually launches on all the major platforms, or at least the two biggest major platforms, then, you know, it is kind of what it is. It's in the past been exclusive to PlayStation exclusively, so I mean, you got to take the wins where you get them, right? That's all we have for follow-ups and corrections. Let's get into trailers. We have a new game announced, Stranger Things VR. You now get to play as Vecna, which is kind of crazy in a VR world. It looks like it's going to be kind of a prequel, only in so much as a prequel to season 4, but maybe potentially to the entire series, though I don't know. I guess the timeline looks a little gray from here, but either way, you get to play as Vecna. You have some pretty crazy telepathic powers, telekinesis and such. Go watch the trailer. The art style is a very interesting choice considering, you know, the dark matter. It seems a little more cartoony than expected, but maybe that's on purpose. I don't know. Either way, it is coming sometime late 2023. The exact date has not been released, nor the exact platforms for which it is going to be released on. So as that day gets closer, we will probably be keeping tabs, and I'll keep you informed, nerds. Never you worry. But that's what we got for trailers. Let's move into regular news. We have Monster Hunter in the regular news. That's right, a new Monster Hunter game has been announced. It's going to be a mobile game, though, so don't hold your breath too long. This game is going to be produced by TiMi Studio Group, who previously worked on the Call of Duty mobile game and Pokemon Unite. So if you like either of those games, then you're probably in luck. I have not heard great things about Call of Duty mobile and nothing about Pokemon Unite, because there are a number of other Pokemon games that kind of take the spotlight. So I don't know. I'm going to pass this one off to you. Are either of those games worth checking out? And if so, does that mean you're pretty excited about this new Monster Hunter game? Let's talk about that in the comment section or on the socials or whatever. So that being said, that's all we have for the regular bits of gaming and tech, which brings us to gaming and tech suggestion this week. Halo Forge just launched in Halo Infinite. I have yet to play it, though I did download it, so we're probably going to be doing a lot of that in stream and building things and playing on new maps, and this is just exactly what the community wanted and potentially what the community needed to stay alive. So I'm kind of tunnel vision right now because Halo Forge is all that's on my mind, so I want to see you guys in Forge playing on new maps and stuff too. So that's your gaming suggestion this week. Comic books and books. We have Iron Man trailer, which is kind of interesting. The return of Tony Stark. We have Blue Beetle in the comic book news, which I'm kind of stoked about. And yeah, let's jump into all of this. First up, let's talk about Invincible Iron Man #1. Writer Gary Dugan, artist Juan Frigeri. I apologize. Frigeri. Book launches December of this year, and the trailer just launched. This is going to be dark Tony Stark. Not dark in that he's a villain, I don't think, though it does seem that they might be leaving the option open. Go watch the trailer, see what I'm talking about. That's definitely what we've got for trailers for this episode. And then we have one piece of regular old news, and that is Blue Beetle Graduation Day, the new Blue Beetle series that the community has been voting on as to the direction and so on and so forth. And it seems Jaime is going to be getting his very own city of residence. It was already El Paso, but El Paso's a real place, and that's not any fun. So Batman has Gotham, Superman has Metropolis, Flash has Central City. Now, Blue Beetle has Palmero City, I believe is what they're calling this. Yeah, Palmero City. So it's going to presumably be a similar situation to the previously mentioned superheroes. We will definitely be keeping tabs because Jamie Reyes is definitely one of my favorite. As we keep tabs on it, though, we'll be talking about it because that's a lot of fun. So that's what we have for regular old news. Let's talk about comic books and books suggestions for the final episode. Our suggestion is a book this time. It is The Diamond Age, or A Young Lady's Illustrated Primer by Neil Stephenson. This is what cemented my love for the cyberpunk subgenre of science fiction. Honestly, it's technically post-cyberpunk, but it has enough cyberpunk elements in it that you're just going to fall in love with it as well. You basically follow your main protagonist as she grows up from a very small child into young adulthood, and I don't know, to give you anything more would either be too confusing, too long, or too spoilery. So you're just gonna have to take my word for it. This book is life-changing. Talking TV streaming. In TV streaming, we have a handful of follow-ups is really all we got. We got a new trailer for a new Carnival Row season, so let's talk about follow-ups first, though. Let's get into Westworld, canceled over at HBO. Yeah, it seems that Zaslav Cleaning House is not done just yet. The last season didn't really get great reviews or ratings, so when those two things don't line up, you gotta go, and that's kind of the way this is lining up. So that's what we got, Westworld. Next, we have Green Lantern. This one has not been axed just yet, though we do have a very interesting update. So you can throw out any of those rumors that we were talking about previously, because HBO Max has lost their head writer, Seth Grahame-Smith. So that means that the show is going to be pivoting, and now, according to the people who are announcing this, the pivot is going to be focusing on Jon Stewart exclusively for this series. Again, it's going to be over on HBO Max. No release date has been announced for it just yet, though I would imagine whatever they were shooting for has just been pushed back by a little bit. From follow-ups, we go into trailers, and like I said, Carnival Row Season 2 has just dropped its first trailer, and also the announcement that Season 2 is going to be the end of the series. February 17th of 2023 is when it is going to go live on Amazon Prime. I believe they did this one in a weekly release schedule. I don't think you're going to be able to binge it all at once, though I don't hold me to that one because I'm not 100%. Either way, the trailer has me pretty hyped about it. If you haven't watched the first season, I strongly suggest that you do, because it is some pretty great fantasy television, especially considering they've got the Amazon budget behind them and whatnot. So that is where we are with trailers, and that is honestly what we have for the TV streaming section. So, TV streaming suggestions. This week we're talking about American Horror Story New York City. The current season of American Horror Story, I read somewhere some reviewers equating it to the 7 of the series, as in 7 the movie. They're comparing it to the movie 7. And I mean, when you consider how bonkers the first 10 seasons are, by all intents and purposes, that makes a fair amount of sense. This is probably the most focused I've ever seen American Horror Story, and also the most coherent I've ever seen American Horror Story. So it's definitely worth a watch if you are a horror fan. Movies. In movies today, we're talking a couple of follow-ups. We also have one trailer and Gears of War in regular old news for movies. So let's start. First things in follow-ups, we have Scream 6, new release date. It's been pushed up a little bit closer, and it's now going to be released on March 10th of 23. Our next follow-up has to do with the next Rambo movie. Sylvester Stallone has come out and said that it is no longer going to be a prequel like he was originally planning. It is now going to be a sequel, and not just any old type of sequel, but it seems a Lego sequel, or a passing of the torch, as he keeps calling it in interviews. So it is not going to be the prequel, the origin of John Rambo. It is going to be the origin of whoever is replacing John Rambo in the franchise, which seems very odd. Why would you replace John Rambo in the Rambo franchise? Though, I mean, they did replace Rocky in the Rocky franchise, so sure. Create a new series, man. I mean, whatever. So that's where we stand with that. We have a trailer to talk about. Glass Onion has dropped its first full-length trailer. The Knives Out sequel is going to be active on Netflix December 23rd, just in time for Christmas. I mean, if you liked the first one and you appreciate Rian Johnson aside from the Star Wars debacles, then this is definitely going to be a movie to watch. The trailer, though, kind of is, is a little vague. It's a little weird, but it's also because it's a murder mystery, so you don't want to give away too much in the trailer. Just go watch the damn thing. And then, let's talk regular-ass news, and that is Gears of War. Netflix has secured the distribution rights for Gears of War properties. They apparently are looking to make Gears of War into kind of a multi-platform release situation, in that they want to release movies and series with the Gears of War tag on it. And now, Cliff Bleszinski, the guy who created Gears of War, is saying publicly that he wants Dave Bautista to take the lead for the Gears of War live action series and movies and so on and so forth, which I can see it. I can get behind that. I agree with Cliffy B. But yeah, that's all we really have right now. No one has been attached to this just yet as far as any creative types, directors, producers, anything like that. Nothing has been announced, though it should be noted that the series that they're talking about, they are saying heavily that it's very likely going to be at least one animated series attached to this. Whether or not a live action series, nobody's saying specifically, but at the very least, one animated series attached to the Gears of War live action property. That being said, that's everything we got for the regular stuff, so let's get to movie suggestions for this episode. We're talking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We're going old school. 88, I believe, is when the OG Ninja Turtles came out. May have been 89. There's been some debate there. But yeah, the original Ninja Turtles movie, I mean, honestly, it holds up incredibly well. If you haven't watched it for some time, I am urging you to go watch it. We are about to get bombarded with Ninja Turtles content as the new animated movie is nearing completion, so we're very likely to see it mid to late 2023. I believe, actually, it might have been announced for 24, but I think they might be moving that guy up. And then also, we have a new live-action movie that is somewhere in pre-production. production, so we're going to be seeing that probably 2025. So remind yourself why you love the Ninja Turtles. Go watch the original movie right now because it's totally worth it. That puts us into the rumor mill, nerds. And in today's rumor mill, we have some music rumors to refute. We have a new source on that Punisher rumor we've been keeping tabs on, as well as Jeff Lemire's Black Hammer and a whole bunch of new rumors to talk about as well. So let's jump into confirmations, refutations. We have one refutation that, oh man, I don't think I should have to refute, but here we go. We have the official word from the Ben Weinman from Dillinger Escape Plan, one of my favorite bands of all time, probably top 10 bands of all time, had to come out and say, actually, no, we're not going to be playing live as Dillinger Escape Plan. I don't know where you've heard that, but there's no plan to do such thing. There's no reunions in the near future for the Dillinger Escape Plan, nor probably in the distant future at this point either. So, yeah, I didn't realize this was a rumor until doing research for today's episode, and now we've just shot it down. So there you go. Our one new source, again, has to do with the Punisher, John Barenthal, returning as the Punisher. This new source is saying that it will be in Phase 5 that we get the new Punisher series on Disney+. I don't know. So this is a much better source than we've had around this, though I think that this source's source is the same as the other sources we've been talking about. So I don't think it should really bump this one up much more than it already has. So we're going to go somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60-65% likely that we will be seeing John Barenthal return as the Punisher. And then as far as Phase 5, that's rumor based on rumor effectively, so we're going to say 50% on the Phase 5 portion of that. All right, so continuing on into the brand new rumors, we have Black Hammer, the Jeff Lemire comic book IP, is getting the full universe treatment from Amazon Studios. Over on Amazon Prime, Lemire has signed a contract that they are going to do what they can to include multiple series and movies surrounding the Black Hammer comic book. This one comes from fantastic sources. Honestly, this is one of those that very likely will be properly announced within the next 2 to 3 weeks because the source has that good of a track record. So we're going to say somewhere in the neighborhood of like 80% likely that this is going to be a thing because that's how good of a track record they've got. Next, we're talking about Into the Spider-Verse 2. And there's actually one that I missed for this. I saw the headline and just kind of ran out of time as far as research goes. So we're not talking about all of the potential rumors here, but these are the ones that we got. We have a couple. First up is Tom Holland is said to be coming back to voice himself in the Spider-Verse sequel. Also, it looks like even if he doesn't return to do his own voice, his version of Spider-Man is going to be in this movie, so he could potentially be voiced by somebody else if, you know, scheduling things happen and he can't make it. Or, you know, contract issues pop up, because that is bound to happen from time to time as well. Also rumored to be in this are Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. And along the same lines of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, we have original or former animation voices, I guess I should say, former animation voice actors Josh Keaton and Christopher Daniel Barnes, all rumored to be making vocal cameos, if you will, in Spider-Verse 2. This all comes from the same source. Actually, no, that's a lie. Everything but the Tom Holland stuff comes from the same source. So Tom Holland has actually been corroborated by a number of exceptional sources. The rest of this comes from almost new source. Like, I've used this place once or twice. Nothing really noteworthy about them. So we're going to do this in two separate likelihoods. Tom Holland, so I guess this is almost three, because there's two levels to the Tom Holland part. Will Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man be present in the Spider-Verse sequel? I think that's got a the likelihood for it. I think we're going about 70% that we'll see Tom Holland's visual likeness appear as a version of Spider-Man in the sequel. Yes. As far as will Tom Holland do the voice, that's rumor based on rumor. We can only go to 50%. Though I think that's a hard 50%. I think that is almost as definite as the likeliness that we'll see his face in the movie. We'll also hear his voice. So there's that. And then the other rumor, the Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, Josh Keaton, and Christopher Daniel Barnes, the four of them coming in to do voices as Spider-Man, I think that's a little slim. I think we're going about 40% there. Just because I think that might be a little generous even, because I think it's... I think the more likely option is that these people's voices, because they're not all voice actors necessarily, but these people's voices will all be present as cameos as something else. I think that is more likely. We're going to put that one at 50%. So I lied twice because we did that in 4 separate things, kind of 2 groups of 2. So yeah, that's kind of where we're sitting with Spider-Man. Let's move on now to Wonder Man. We have a different rumor for Wonder Man. This is not new sources saying the same things. This is new sources saying new things. Bob Odenkirk, aka Saul from Better Call Saul, or Bob from Mr. Show with Bob and David, that's the same guy. So Bob Odenkirk is rumored to be cast in the Wonder Man movie or series, I think that's still up in the air, as Simon Williams' manager. So if you remember, Wonder Man is a stuntman in Hollywood in the comics, and apparently that's going to be the direction they go with this live-action IP that supposedly Yahya Abdul-Mateen II is going to be playing the Wonder Man that is in this live-action adaptation. And so now Bob Odenkirk is being rumored to be playing his manager, and that's noteworthy because Bob Odenkirk wouldn't just take some tiny little role, so it looks like if this rumor is to be believed, they're going to be going with the version of the manager, because that character has had a number of managers through the years, the version of the manager who was a villain for the Wonder Man character all at the same time. So that, honestly, sounds awesome. Not a great source, though, sad to say. There are much stronger indications that Yahya Abdul-Mateen II is going to be playing Wonder Man than Bob Odenkirk is going to be playing his manager. So we said Yahya being Wonder Man is roughly, I think it was like 65 or so percentage. I'm going to put this one just above halfway because it's not a horrible source, just not one of my best. So we're going to say probably we're right about 55% likelihood that Bob Odenkirk is going to be in the Wonder Man live action adaptation. So moving right along, we next have a Star Wars leak. So leaks, and this is a solid leak too. This is not even like, it leaked from questionable sources, like the Hideo Kojima leak that we're not talking about in this episode, just because there's way too many probabilities that this is not a real thing. Anyway, so we have a Star Wars leak that is Star Wars Zen, Grogu, and the Dust Bunnies. It seems that this has been leaked by Italian Disney Plus, which is why I say it's much more likely to happen than the other one. It is going to be presented to us sometime in the next 2 weeks, according to the leak, as another special event on Disney Plus. So this one I think we're going to take in two pieces, just because we have placeholder dates that happen and those are not usually accurate. So will we see a special event on Disney Plus called Star Wars Zen, Grogu, and the Dust Bunnies, or something akin to that? I think that's pretty strong. I think that's very likely. I think, honestly, it's more likely it'll be in December, but either way, I think it's pretty likely. Probably going to be an animated feature, I would imagine. So we're going to put the likelihood that we see that movie, or a better English translation of that movie title, we're going to put that one right about 80%. Like, this is kind of in the territory of I would be surprised if it doesn't actually happen. Will it be November 12th? I don't think so. I think we're going to put that one at about 30%. No, I don't think that that part of the leak was accurate. I think that's a placeholder date. And if we're far too close to that date for them to have not said anything at this point. Will it potentially happen 2 weeks before Christmas? That seems much more likely. So yeah, that's what we've got on that one. Let's move next to Ryan Murphy is talking about rebooting Glee, if you want to believe reports. And Ryan Murphy gets what Ryan Murphy wants. So if this is to be believed, and I think it is, to some degree, I don't think it's going to be... I think it might be like a movie or maybe a straight to streaming situation. I don't think it's going to go broadcast. I think it's going to go to Hulu or something like that. Yeah, I think Ryan Murphy gets what Ryan Murphy wants, and so we're going to put this one at 70%, just because it's not a great source, but yeah, there's reason there. Anyway, next we're talking about Superman. This one's pretty huge, honestly. There are rumors surrounding the fact. So Steven Spielberg met with David Zaslav. Like, that is undebatable. There is evidence, there's hardcore evidence that this happened. So the rumor is the reason they met is because Spielberg is in talks with Zaslav to direct Man of Steel 2. That's right. One of the greatest directors of all time is potentially going to direct The Big Blue Boy Scout. So this one seems way too fan theory-ish, too fan fiction-y to say that it's, I don't know. I feel like, again, we do know that the meeting happened. We do know that it was kind of sort of in public on the Warner Brothers lot. So, like, there would be more than just a small handful of sources saying that this was a thing. So, I don't know, I just get the strong impression that they were talking about something else, especially considering that Man of Steel 2 would very likely have to come out pretty dang quick in order to capitalize on the Henry Cavill situation and so on and so forth. And Steven Spielberg's hands are pretty tied for a little while with this whole Avatar situation, because he's still making Avatar 3. Like, I don't think that, the timing doesn't align for this to be legit. So while I want it to be a thing, I don't think it's going to be. We're going to say probably 25% likelihood that Steven Spielberg will have anything to do with a Man of Steel 2 movie. Next on our list is another Star Wars rumor. This one has to do with Deadpool director Shawn Levy is reportedly been brought in to direct his very own Star Wars movie as well. I feel like if we had a list of all of the directors who have been given the opportunity to direct a Star Wars movie that haven't come to fruition, we would be here all day trying to list them off. So I think this is we're just adding to that list. This is fan theory at best. I'm going to say 20% likelihood that Shawn Levi is going, or Levy, I don't know how his last name is pronounced, and I apologize. But yeah, I don't think that he's going to be a Star Wars director. It just, until we get stronger evidence other than just people saying, well, I think, we're going to say, again, 25%. So, staying in the Deadpool 3 vein, we have word that Owen Wilson's character from Loki, better known as Agent Mobius, will be making an appearance in the Deadpool 3 movie. I think that has a pretty strong possibility, because the nature of the Loki series is fairly fourth wall acknowledging. I don't know if it's breaking, but it's fourth wall acknowledging to a certain degree. And Deadpool is Deadpool. I think that it seems like a reasonable rumor, if you will. Just because I'm hopeful, we're going to put this one right about 50%, which I think is a little generous, but it would be good fan service to do that. So, and Disney is kind of in need of some fan service these days. Next, we're talking about a DC Universe rumor over from DC Studios. We have rumor that Lobo is going to be introduced into the DC Universe rather soon. And not only that, but Jason Momoa is teasing that it might be him. is teasing, is feeding the rumor mill in ways by being super vague about some new DC property that or DC project rather, that he's going to be a part of. So, I think there's a lot of trolling going on here. I think there's a lot of gauging fan reaction that's going on here. I think there's a lot of not actually putting the wheels to the ground kind of stuff going on here. So I'm gonna say probably, as it stands right now, because Momoa is already Aquaman, like that just seems ridiculous that he would be two major DC characters. So we're putting this one at about 35% just because of all of that, all of those factors. Next, we're talking about PlayStation. There's another gaming rumor. This one is not game specific, but console specific. There is a rumor that PlayStation 5 is getting a new slim model, a cheaper model, if you will. Much like the PlayStation 2, and I don't think PlayStation 3 or 4 got a slim model, but PlayStation 2 definitely did, and that is kind of the genesis of this rumor. And it seems that there's a little bit of evidence to coincide with this. If you are familiar with the Austin Evans YouTube channel, he recently did a video where he took apart 3 different iterations of the PlayStation 5, and you can see that they have been actively working to minimize the guts of the console. So now, with that being hard fact, hard evidence proving these things are happening, and now we get this insider information that PlayStation, or Sony specifically, is looking to make a second SKU so they can sell cheaper PlayStation 5s, it stands to reason that there is plenty there to go on. So we're going to say this one's about 70% likely that we're going to be seeing a PlayStation 5 Slim, very probably 2024-ish, I would imagine. So, and nerds, that's the end of the episode. That is the end of season, what are we in? Season 5 for the regular channel? So yeah, season 5 is coming to an end with this episode. Again, we're very probably going to be doing another live episode, so that will be the proper end, but that's a live episode and not a pre-recorded episode, and those are very different animals. So if you want to join that live episode, 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time on the YouTube channel, on this YouTube channel that you're watching this, unless you're listening on audio, and then it's Generally Nerdy over on YouTube. Go check it out. Join the conversation actively, lively. We play video games and stuff once we're done with the news, and it's a lot of fun, and people hang out, and we chit chat. So join the conversation, do the thing. I appreciate your faces, nerds. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, do all the things. Buttons with thumbs and things, and I love you, nerds. We'll see you Friday, and then we're going to be taking 2 weeks off. So either way, before we go, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.